Artlist.io.
What can audiences expect from the show on March 12th at the Pageant?
They can expect to start looking at serial killers incredibly differently. It's a completely different take. I do a deep dive into the psyche of serial killers. So it's kind of like getting on the serial killer ride at Disneyland and not really knowing where you're going to go, but you're going to wind up having a different perspective at the end. So I have a formula that I show people. That I'm writing a book right now about the formula of what makes a serial killer a serial killer. And there's 9 cumulative factors that I have found across the board with all the serial killers I've researched. And so, I basically tell you the 9 factors, and then I apply them to prominent serial killers.
Now, I know that St. Louis has a past with some serial killers. The one name that I keep
Maury
seeing...
Travis.
Yes, Maury Travis. I was not aware of him. What can you tell me about Mr. Travis?
Well, there's a couple of things why you haven't heard about him. It's a bit of racism, right? I mean, we see a lot of white serial killers. That's something that, so people always ask me, why are they all white men? It's like, they're not all white men. In fact, currently, and this is something I don't bring up very often, from the serial killer database, there are more black serial killers than white serial killers in the United States right now. And so Maury Travis is a black man. The most prolific serial killer in our country is a black man named Sam Little. And it's because first of all, black people don't make the news, especially if they're black victims. We know that if there are black victims, we don't hear about it. And that's the racism part. But then there's the other part where it's like you want to avoid marginalizing these people any further than you already have, because in the past they've been called criminals when they haven't been. And so if you sensationalize these black serial killers, then it's like, oh, now people are going to think all black people are serial killers. So it's such a tricky fine line to play with here. And so you've got to, Maury Travis is a black man. He killed around 17 to 20 women. And St. Louis, but he does fit the profile. I mean, this profile, meaning this formula, he's in it. So he has, so I think that's that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. When I was reading up on him, I found out a little bit about, he had apparently not told everyone where he buried all the bodies. I guess that was part of it. Well, that seems like kind of a trend among serial killers from what I've read. I mean, is that something that is, a trend that you found? Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be serial killers who are super accountable at the end of the day, like Jeffrey Dahmer, who told, he disclosed, people he killed that no one ever would have known were killed, or, they maybe knew they were missing, but he just decided, okay, once he was caught, I'm going to tell not only everything, but where their bodies or what happened to them, all that. Those are the ones that are super accountable, to the point where they're almost too accountable. There's a lot of black and white thinking among serial killers. So Jeffrey Dahmer would say things like, oh, my family was perfect, nobody did anything, it's all me, and that was BS. So, but then they're the ones who are the ones like you're talking about, who they're constantly externalizing blame. They're always finding another person or another thing, and those are the ones that avoid telling you where the bodies are. They like the fact that they have something over you. It's often a more narcissistic serial killer, and so, but yes, they will keep that information because that's still the power they have over you, and a lot of it is, I have power because I have knowledge that you don't.
Are true crime stories, or true crime in general, is that something that's always had your interest?
Always. I mean, from the time that I was very little, I witnessed a girl getting hit and killed by a car when I was 5 years old. And around that time, of course, I really understood death was a thing. And so anything that could cause death in the world, I became really fascinated by. And I wrote stories and drew pictures of very gory things. And my teachers even called home because they're like, what is wrong with your daughter? Like, this is not normal for a girl. But for whatever reason, I've always been drawn to the macabre things in life. And so, and also just the quote unquote monsters, I loved, King Kong, Dumbo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I mean, anyone that just felt very, othered in our society. I've always been drawn to these types. So even though, I just went through these sweet, creatures and characters, it's like, and to even compare them to serial killers would be appalling to a lot of people. But because I understand the psychology of what these individuals have been through, I'm starting to understand, okay, so you've got someone who is maybe deformed physically on the outside. These people are all profoundly disturbed on the inside, and it's just reversed.
Mm-hmm. I have a strong interest in this topic as well, and I like to watch the different shows, like Mindhunter and Dahmer.
Yeah.
And what do you think draws people to those, and what's made them so popular today?
I think that the internet makes it seem like it's a bigger thing now, but think about true detective comics back in the 1950s. People have always been interested in this stuff. I mean, the first serial killer that I can think of goes back to the 15th century, Gilles de Rais, who fought alongside Joan of Arc, and he's responsible for at least 150 little boys going missing, and the things he did to them are just unspeakable almost. And then there's Elizabeth Bathory in the 16th century, who she apparently killed around 600 virgins because she wanted to bathe in their blood to keep herself youthful. So, and Jack the Ripper, I mean, think about the craze about Jack the Ripper, I mean, and H.H. Holmes. I mean, things like this have always been around. It's just that the internet, like the fires in California, it just makes it feel like it's so much bigger. Not that the fires in California aren't huge, but I mean, when you watch the internet, it seems like all of California is burning down. And so it seems like the sensation of true crime is just way bigger. Now it's like, no, we just are more connected now, and we're finding that there's more of us out there who really like this stuff.
So when it comes to you, what is it that really fascinates you about the psychology of serial killers?
Well, like I said, I mean, I've always been drawn to these misunderstood, quote unquote, monsters of our world, whether they're fictional creatures like E.T. or real people like Jeffrey Dahmer or Richard Ramirez, or I've been drawn to. Okay, I get that, and just it's the intense response that these people get. And whenever anyone gets an intense response, in my opinion, from what I found as a psychologist, it is a sign that there is something in you that needs to be looked at. And I'm not saying, of course there's moral outrage, but then it's like, well, then what is it that's causing the moral outrage? We all get attached to things. The reason why we get so upset by people who kill is because we're attached to our loved ones. We don't want to see them go, but we're all going to die. I'm not saying that like, oh, who cares? They're going to kill us and nobody should. But it's more like we need to look more. It's about looking at ourselves. So my whole objective with this show is to not get you to say, see, oh, these serial killers are these madmen who, just are very different from us. No, I'm showing you they could have been any of us. That's what my point is like, you are lucky that you weren't raised with this type of environment, with these types of genetics. Like if it, again, it's a luck of the draw, a roll of the dice. And I think that's what captivates people, is knowing somewhere deep down it could have been any of us.
Absolutely. Have you ever studied one of these serial killers and been just, has there been one that really just stuck with you as, just very repulsive and just disturbed you to the point where you are, thought about it a lot?
Well, I'm really good at repressing things, so I think I would say that the ones that stand out that it took me a while to apply my formula and my compassion to these ones, because I'd avoided them. Like Dahmer was easy. I was like, okay, this one he's not sadistic. He's just not. He obviously was selfish, and he did things because he wanted to do them for his own selfish reasons, but he made sure to drug them and, he didn't want to torture them sadistically. Right. Now, it's the ones that have that extreme need to torture. Now, the one that comes to mind is David Parker Ray, the toy box killer. He, to me, is up there with some would consider the worst of the worst if we're talking about moral outrage. Moral outrage in the sense that he got off on just sadistically torturing on every single level. He created a torture chamber that I believe is about $100,000 that made Gacy's torture chamber look like child's play. And he would take his victims and he would blindfold them and he'd play them a tape before he did anything, listing all the things they were about to go through. And the fact that he was then going to drug them and brainwash them. So after all this happened, they would never remember that they went through all of this, and it would screw them up forever. And so, and then of course he did all these things, but just the level of joy that he got from just just torturing. And then, but it's like, and so people that get upset with sadistic behavior, it's like most people who get really upset by that then must have a little bit of, we all have a little bit of sadism in us. I compare it all to a spectrum. I look at online trolls. It's like online trolls are very sadistic. They just kill people from the inside out. And it's just a different way of doing it. So those are the ones that are probably more likely to judge someone for being sadistic when they have it more in themselves.
You know, I'm in education myself, and one thing that I've always had a strong interest in is the mass shootings that happen at schools.
Yeah.
Have you studied any of these individuals, say, you know,
Yes.
Klebold or Harris? Is there links to some of these individuals and serial killers?
Well, no. I mean, there are one of the factors of the 9 that I mentioned of the psychology of serial killers is definitely on the list. I'm doing my own psychology of mass shooters right now because I do think I'm with you. We need to. These people are on the rise while serial killers are on the decline. So we need to be, and it's a much bigger problem. So we need to be looking at the psychology of mass shooters to help, ideally, with early detection, intervention, and ideally prevention, because we need to stop these people in their tracks.
Yeah. So for someone who may not know a whole lot about serial killers, that might be a new topic to them. You know, why should they come to your show?
People that don't know much about serial killers?
Yeah, both. I mean, just say I'm a person that doesn't know a whole lot about it. But, you know, or I'm a person that does feel like I know a lot about it. What am I going to learn compared to someone who doesn't know a whole lot?
You're going to learn, again, in my opinion, it comes down to the human condition. Just look at Viktor Frankl talks about the Holocaust, and that was one of the ways he looked at a very extreme situation to get us to rethink humans and human behavior and what drives us. And I'm doing a similar, I mean, obviously it's a very kind of flip side of it, but I'm looking at extreme behavior in order for us to understand ourselves better as humans. And so if you're a human, whether you know a lot about serial killers or not, you're going to walk away having something in you likely shifted. And that's, I think, you know, it's almost like a really massive group therapy session with like 1,200 people or whatever, however big the room is.
So, you know, some people might say, well, I could sit at home and watch a documentary or read a book. But do you think part of the experience of this is being around maybe a couple thousand other people?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things that I say, getting back to this idea of serial killers, it's the fetishization of individualism and the fetishization of guns. I think that's a big part of why we have such a problem in this country. And one of the things we are lacking is community. And there's something so beautiful about being around a community of people who are very curious. And I think curiosity is the most important thing we can have, other than compassion. You know, and just having that fundamental curiosity allows us to be more open, and just having open-minded people or even closed-minded people, but just connecting us and understanding, wow, there's a group of people, maybe my whole life I felt weird, and now I don't feel so weird anymore because I'm at this event, and I feel like there's a bunch of people who are just owning it and just as curious or not as curious as I am, you know. And so I do think community events inspire more community events. And I think, you know, as a culture, when it comes to mental health, we desperately need more community.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Dr. Toles, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you at the Pageant on March 12th here in St. Louis.
I look forward to seeing you. Please.
Music licensing reimagined.